Save the Connelly Reservation. The Connelly Reservation keeps the World Court from asserting jurisdiction over our internal affairs. Repealing the Connelly Reservation could be equivalent to annulling the Constitution, giving the World Court unlimited jurisdiction over activities of the American people and of their government. The World Court consists of 15 judges chosen by the United Nations. No communist nation accepts World Court jurisdiction, but they can have judges on it. The Soviet Union has the unique right to have 3 judges on the World Court. No other nation can have more than 1. The last major effort in the Senate to repeal the Connelly Reservation was made in 1960. The public stormed Washington politicians with protests, and the Connelly Reservation was saved. Shortly after the 1964 elections, the Johnson administration gave notice that it will again try to repeal the Connelly Reservation. That is a summary of my report on Save the Connelly Reservation. The full report after a message from my sponsors. On November 17, 1964, Dean Rusk, Secretary of State, gave notice that the Johnson administration will urge the United States Senate to repeal the Connelly Reservation. The Johnson administration seems to think it has a mandate from the people to do something which the people have emphatically demonstrated they do not want done. Repealing the Connelly Reservation could be equivalent to annulling the Constitution of the United States. The United Nations Charter established the World Court, which consists of 15 judges nominated by the UN Secretary General, elected for 9-year terms by a majority vote in the UN Security Council and in the General Assembly. 9 judges constitute a quorum for the World Court to do business. A majority of the 9 can render judgments. This means that 5 judges on a court of 15 can make decisions. No judge can be removed from the court regardless of what he does, except by unanimous decision of the other 14 judges. The court establishes its own jurisdiction. There is no appeal from a decision of the court. Thus, the World Court is a most extraordinary judicial body. The most astonishing thing about it, however, is that it can be staffed and controlled by nations which spurn its jurisdiction. Of the present 15 World Court judges, 7 are from nations which do not accept the court's jurisdiction at all. 2 of the present World Court judges are from communist nations, Poland and the Soviet Union. No communist nation accepts the court's jurisdiction, but all can have judges on it. And the Soviets enjoy the unique right to have 3 judges on the World Court. No other nation can have more than 1. When we joined the UN in July 1945, we automatically became a member of the World Court, but were not bound to accept its jurisdiction unless our government filed a formal declaration of acceptance. Senator Wayne Morse introduced a resolution to authorize such acceptance, but specifying that the World Court could not have jurisdiction over matters which are essentially within the domestic jurisdiction of the United States. Conservative senators raised a vital question. Who will determine whether a matter is essentially within our domestic jurisdiction? The Morse group said the World Court itself should make that determination. Conservatives said this would give the World Court unlimited jurisdiction over our national affairs. The court could, for example, hold that American immigration and tariff policies affect all nations and are therefore international matters, subject to control by international authority. United States Senator Tom Connelly, Texas Democrat, proposed an amendment or reservation to the Morse World Court resolution. The Connelly Reservation consists of 6 words, as determined by the United States. On August 2, 1946, the Senate approved the Morse World Court resolution as amended by the Connelly Reservation. Thus, our acceptance of the World Court jurisdiction provides that the United States will not accept compulsory jurisdiction of the court in matters which are essentially within the domestic jurisdiction of the United States as determined by the United States. Internationalists immediately began a propaganda campaign to kill the Connelly Reservation. In 1960, they thought they were ready. Democrat Senator Hubert Humphrey, joined by Republican Senator Jacob Javits, had introduced a resolution to repeal the Connelly Reservation. Eisenhower had endorsed the proposal. Senator J. William Fulbright scheduled hearings before the Senate Foreign Relations Committee in January 1960. apparently intending to hear only witnesses who favored repeal. It seemed cut and dried. The Connelly Reservation would be repealed before the public even knew what the reservation was. When word got out, however, the public was quick to realize that repeal of the Connelly Reservation meant unconditional surrender to the World Court. Washington politicians were deluged with wires, letters, petitions, and resolutions demanding that the Connelly Reservation be saved. In March 1960, Fulbright's Foreign Relations Committee tabled the Humphrey proposal to repeal the Connelly Reservation, not letting it go to the Senate for a vote. Liberals who want to repeal the Connelly Reservation imply that the United States stands alone in dishonor for nullifying the rule of law in international matters because the Connelly Reservation does not permit the World Court to assert whatever jurisdiction it pleases over American affairs. That is totally false. Of the 115 nations in the UN, only 35 accept the court's jurisdiction. Of those 35, 31 reserve the right to reject World Court jurisdiction when they please. Only 4 nations in the world really accept compulsory World Court jurisdiction in their international affairs: the United States, Mexico, Liberia, and Free China. As to the rule of law in international affairs, law is meaningless without enforcement power. At present, nothing but world war could force a major nation to obey the World Court. That would be senseless because the court is supposed to prevent war, not cause it. For enforcing World Court decisions, the only alternative to world war is a universal police state. A World Court, backed by enough power to enforce its decisions, would of necessity be a world dictatorship. If no one resisted, we would have world peace through world law. America's internationalists do not say they want a one-world dictatorship to enforce world peace through world law. They claim to want only a world in which all nations will try to settle international disputes peacefully without resort to war or force. That objective is noble, but not new. Men have wanted this kind of world since the beginning of civilization. America, as a nation, exerted her maximum influence in leading the world toward peace and freedom during the 148 years when we followed George Washington's policy of national independence, keeping out of the political affairs of other nations and compelling them to keep out of ours, being fair, scrupulous, and open in keeping all the terms of all our treaty agreements with other nations and holding them accountable for keeping the same agreements. That is the only kind of world peace through world law that has any real meaning. Such behavior won for America the respect of the world and encouraged other nations to follow her example. Since we renounced that benign policy of national independence in 1945, our prestige and leadership in the world have crumbled, while the power of communist nations has increased. The World Court says its jurisdiction rests on agreements between nations and on the charters and constitutions of various United Nations organizations. The World Court specifically cites American foreign aid agreements as documents providing World Court jurisdiction. Think about that. If the Connelly Reservation were repealed and the United States should subsequently stop foreign aid, all UN members affected, which would be most of them, could claim that our action damaged them. What if they brought charges in the World Court to compel us to continue foreign aid? We might argue that taxation imposed on Americans by their own government is strictly an internal affair, not subject to jurisdiction of the World Court. The other nations could argue that American taxation to support foreign aid programs vitally affect the economy of the world. Here then would be a dispute about jurisdiction, and the World Court Charter says that when there is a dispute, the court itself can determine whether it has jurisdiction. In joining the World Health Organization, the United States pledged itself to promote health throughout the world. Promoting health, according to the World Health Organization, involves not only conventional activity in the fields of medicine and hygiene, but also housing, nutrition, economic conditions, employment, and mental conditions. As long as there are people on Earth not enjoying complete physical, mental, and social well-being, some will feel that the United States has not done its best to create utopia. If we repeal the Connelly Reservation, nations less prosperous than we are could formally charge us with failure to fulfill our treaty pledge to the World Health Organization. The charge would be an international matter, subject to World Court jurisdiction, because the court says so, citing the World Health Organization Constitution as authority. Without the protection of the Connelly Reservation, Americans, because of the UN Genocide Convention, would be exposed to arrest, transportation overseas, and trial before the World Court if accused of causing harm in any way to any member of a national, ethnical, racial, or religious group. Surely the public can and will, in 1965, as it did in 1960, storm the Senate with an irresistible volume of demands that the Senate reject all efforts to repeal the Connelly Reservation. Without the Connelly Reservation, the World Court, by the terms of its own charter and by its own assertion of authority and jurisdiction, could decide to claim jurisdiction over any matter within the United States, literally putting every individual American and every government within the United States under the jurisdiction of this foreign body, composed of 15 judges, on which we have only one judge, on which the communists could have a dominating majority.